My name is Leslie Salgado. I'm the chair of Friends of Latin America. On behalf of the Baltimore Cuba Resolution Committee, I would like to thank you for joining us this afternoon to this event in solidarity with Cuba. We are going to discuss Cuba, COVID, and ending the US blockade. What can we do? This event is being co-sponsored by Baltimore Peace Action, Communist Party USA Baltimore, Friends of Latin America, People's Power Assembly, and the Socialist Unity Party. In addition, the following organizations are endorsing it: All African People's Revolutionary Party, Bay Area Saving Lives Committee, Black Alliance for Peace, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Casa Baltimore Limay, Colectivo Causay, DC Metro Coalition in Solidarity with the Cuban Revolution, International League of People's Struggle, Katarungan, DC, Malaya Movement, Baltimore, Maryland Council of Elders, 6th Regional Diaspora Caucus, the Solidarity Collective, Ujima People's Progress Party, Veterans for Peace, Phil Berrigan Chapter, and Youth Against War and Racism. For the next 2 hours or so, we are going to have 3 guest speakers combined with musical performances and a chance for you to contribute towards this effort. Each guest speaker will have about 15 minutes to do his or her presentation. Your questions and comments can be posted on the chat. We will do our best to get our speakers to respond after the last speaker. I would like now to introduce Andrew Mayton. Andrew is an active member of Socialist Unity Party and contributes with many other organizations, including Friends of Latin America. He will introduce the Baltimore Cuba Resolution Committee. Thank you.
Good. Just to let folks know, we will be recording this meeting. So my name's Andrew. I have Andre next to me. We're from the Socialist Unity Party. We also work closely with the People's Power Assembly. We have been, as a committee of a bunch of different organizations, Leslie mentioned them at the top, but Leslie, Cindy, Ken, Richard, Oakes, Teresa, Reuter, a whole bunch of people are on this call. I'm sorry if I forgot you. But we have been working for almost 2 years to get a resolution passed in the Baltimore City Council. Thanks to all of our collective work and a couple of people that we met along the way, we were able finally to get it passed unanimously through the Baltimore City Council. I say unanimously, but there was one abstention, but I'm still saying unanimous. It went to the mayor's desk. The mayor does not need to sign it. It's going to be transmitted. Part of our resolution was saying, get this to Congress, get this to the president, show them that Baltimore City says no to the blockade. We have joined a bunch of different cities, states, municipalities who have also passed a similar resolution, including Berkeley, California, Cambridge, Massachusetts, Chicago, Illinois, Cleveland, Ohio, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Oakland, California, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Richmond, California, Sacramento, California, San Francisco, California, Santa Cruz, California, Seattle, Washington, Milwaukee County, Wisconsin, Wayne County, Michigan, State of Illinois House of Representatives, State of Minnesota Legislature, AFSCME 3800, Minnesota, Albany, New York Labor Council, Fresno Central Labor Council, IWU 2021 International Convention passed this resolution. The Martin Luther King Jr. County Labor Council in King County, Washington, National Black Workers Center, Sacramento Central Labor Council, San Francisco Labor Council, Troy, New York, Washington State Labor Council, the Lenox Public School Board in Los Angeles, Milwaukee Public Schools, and before I bore you to tears, that's about the list. But I did think it was important to name all those localities, municipalities, because it shows us that you can do it in your locality too. Thanks everybody for being here, and excited to keep this program going. Leslie, you're
Leslie's
muted.
muted.
Okay. Leslie?
So we are next anyway, me and Andre. So we're gonna start with a song. All right. You want to talk about the song? Introduce yourself.
Good evening. I'm Andre Powell here along with Andrew Mayton. We are the Struggle La Lucha People's Band, and we are going to sing the song that is a song that is dear in the hearts of many of our friends in Cuba. I'm going to try my best. Song most of you are familiar with, have heard many times before. It is called Guantanamera.
Tendría que quitar el video. Tendría que quitar el video.
Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera, Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera. I'm just a man from the islands, born in the shade of the palm tree. I'm just a man from the islands, born in the shade of the palm tree, inspired to tell my longing. I'll leave my sorrows behind, restore me. Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera, Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera. My words are spoken sincerely and ring with hope for tomorrow. My words are spoken sincerely and ring with hope for tomorrow. I speak of life and its promise. I know its joy and its sorrow. Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera, Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera. I choose the poor as my people and share their dreams and their troubles. I choose the poor as my people and share their dreams and their troubles. I'd rather lose every comfort than turn away from the struggles. Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera, Guantanamera, Guajira Guantanamera.
Okay, so what I was saying is that some of you may have received the initial notice to this event that had programmed with the Cuban ambassador, Lanis Torres Rivera. Unfortunately, she could not make it due to other duties. However, we are very pleased that Cuban Deputy Chief of Mission to the US, Mr. Alejandro Garcia, is here with us. Please, Alejandro, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon for everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation to the Embassy of Cuba to this event. We really appreciate the invitation and the possibility of share with you some updating about the US-Cuba relation. Most important, to share with you our gratitude for the help and solidarity that all of you have shown to Cuba during all the years of the revolution, because of given that you know that the solidarity with Cuba from the US did not start in 1959, it's important to remind that even in the 19th century, the American Brigadier Henry Reeve fought in the guerrilla of the Mambises, fighting for the independence of Cuba against the Spanish metropolis.
Hey,
So it's important to mention that part of the history. And later, on 1885 until 1895, when Jose Marti was creating and was setting the Revolutionary Cuban Party in order to organize a new war against the Spanish metropolis, he got the solidarity and he got the help of many Americans in Tampa and in other American cities. And that was a very important fact in his effort to make new political forces to fight for the independence of Cuba. And at that time in Tampa, the help of the American citizens was critical in that time. So it's very important to mention that. Then later, within the revolution, we saw many friends of Cuba in the US, like you today, and that solidarity and that help has been a very important for our fight, a very important movement and actions who have shown us that we have not only friends in many different countries, that we have a lot of friends in the same territory in which continuous governments have been trying to destroy the revolution. So the Embassy in Cuba would like to thank to all of you for all your efforts. It has been very comfortable starting this session here in the Cuban Conga and the Guantanamera, because that helped us to being closer to Cuba today in this Sunday afternoon. So thank you again. Talking about a little bit about our reality today and about the solidarity, it's important to mention the effort that Pastor for Peace, with the leading effort of Lucius Walker and now his daughter, Gail Walker, have done in the last 30 years, bringing a lot of humanitarian aid to Cuba, a lot of medicines, a lot of medical equipments for people with disabilities. And all those efforts have helped a lot of Cubans during many years. And that effort began in a moment which is not too much different than the moment that Cuba had today. Because in 1992 and 1991, when Lucius started his efforts of helping Cuba, Cuba was in a very difficult economical moment when there was a joining environment between the sanctions and the blockade by the USA and the collapse of the Soviet Union and the socialist field. So the moment in which Lucius started his work was a very similar moment that we had today, with the combination of more than 243 measures and sanctions set by the Trump administrations, which have not changed in 1 millimeter during the Biden administration, and at the same moment with the COVID-19 pandemic hurting the Cuban economy, the Cuban tourism, and the Cuban daily life of our people. So that efforts that Lucius did at that time was so important, like the efforts that you have been doing today 30 years ago. So we appreciate a lot that, and we think that with your help, we will be encouraged to continue our conviction to defend the revolution, not only to defend the revolution, but also to continue the relation and good and better actions in coordination with all of you, our friends in the U.S. During as you know, during the last maybe 20 months, the Cuban people and the Cuban government have gone through a very difficult situation. But despite of the pandemic, despite of the U.S. sanctions, we have been capable to obtain or to create 3 different vaccines and 2 vaccine candidates under this condition. And that has been possible because of the effort that was made by Commander-in-Chief Fidel Castro almost 40 years ago on creating the biotechnology industry in Cuba. Despite of the blockade of the US, the Cuban scientists and the Cuban doctor have been capable to obtain those 3 vaccines, and at the same time to continue working on 2 other candidates for the disease, and even to obtain many different treatments and many different pills and other procedures to combat and trying to decrease the level of the death rate of the COVID-19 in our country. As I said before, in the last or during the Biden administration, all the sanctions that were set by the Trump government have not changed at any in any measure. Any of the measures have been removed by the Biden administration. 2 days before Trump left the office, the White House, he reinstated Cuba in the terrorist list, which created much more damage to the Cuban economy and to the sanctions, because the adding Cuba to the terrorist list implied a lot of new sanctions by itself. So that situation was one of the last things that Trump did, but Biden administration have not removed, has not changed that policy. And we believe that your effort, your solidarity is as important as in the moment that 3 years ago and 6 years ago, many other friends did in the US on trying to denounce these harshest and longest scheme of sanctions in the history of the mankind. No other people around the world have been suffering for too many years, too many sanctions in a very complex labyrinth of economic measures against us, but the Cuban people have been able to overcome all of this. So that is my main thoughts for you today. I don't want to waste many other minutes from you, and thank you again for all your effort, and thank you again for solidarity towards the Cuban people and towards our government. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Garcia. Thank you for your kind words. And you know that some of us have been in this for many, many years. We were hoping a few years ago, that things were changing in the right direction, in the correct direction, towards talking to our people in Cuba, our neighbors. But unfortunately, things reversed, and we're working on that. And we have the certainty that we have to continue working and that things will change again. Our solidarity with the people of Cuba who are suffering because of this cruel US blockade. Next, I have the pleasure of introducing Gail Walker, IFCO's Executive Director. We're happy to say that some of our organizations have been supporting IFCO's Pastors for Peace caravans to Cuba since Gail's late father, Reverend Lucius Walker, started them in the 90s. Gail will provide an overview on Cuba solidarity work in the US. Thank you, Gail, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all. Can you hear me? Okay. Yay. Okay. I'm unmuted, but I want to make sure that you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Leslie. I've known Leslie for many years, and it's always a joy to share moments of solidarity. So thank you so much. I want to first give greetings to Deputy Chief of Mission, Alejandro Garcia. I want to also ask you, Mr. Garcia, to please extend our deepest appreciation to the ambassador for all the work that she's been doing. We know these are difficult times for all of our friends in Cuba, but we're grateful that you could be with us this evening. And of course, I want to extend my appreciation to the organizers of this event, the Baltimore Cuba Resolution Committee, and all of the others who helped to pull this important activity together. Extend our appreciation for being here with you and for making this happen. I think that the timing of such a gathering is so important, given the extensive lies and misinformation that's really being spread about Cuba at this time. It's especially important, and especially an important time to talk about Cuba. And it is worth noting that today alone, there are a number of activities that are going on, virtually in support of Cuba. Today on September 19th, there have been and will be a number of informational events taking place, including that are all featuring Cuban voices. We're grateful to have the Deputy Ambassador, the Deputy Chief of Mission with us today. Earlier today, Carlos Fernandez de Cosio, who is from MINREX, the Director General there working with North America, spoke eloquently, among others, about the aftermath of July 11. And it was important to hear directly from our Cuban friends about that reality. This afternoon, there's going to be a webinar entitled Cuba and U.S. Voices, Challenging Washington's War on Cuba, featuring Pedro de la Hoz, Vice President of the President of UNIAC, Cuba's Union of Writers and Artists. And we got a chance to meet with him, Dr. Samira Adri, who you hear from shortly, and I, as well as Angie Langdon, when we were just recently in Cuba. And it was really important to hear directly from our Cuban friends about the reality of not only post the July 11th, what's happening around the issue of race, what's happening around the issues of the shortages, the challenges that our Cuban family members are encountering. So this will be a wonderful opportunity for people to hear from him. Later this afternoon, Nasira Gomez, some of you may know, who was a leader in the faith community in Cuba and has been really a strong member of our distribution committee, helping to distribute aid when we've brought the aid to Cuba with our caravans. There'll be a conversation with Nasira this afternoon. And then lastly, Catherine Murphy and Hot House will be featuring a film about the early works of a Brazilian author and educator, Paulo Freire. So my point is that Cuba is on the front burner, and our responsibility as Cuba's friends is to push back against the unjust attacks on the island, to lift up Cuba and its reality. The claims that are out there, besides the social media, the recent social media attacks, the claims that Cuba is a failed state, that it's denying its people human rights, that it's treating its doctors as slaves, and of course the abuse of social media to attack Cuba, the hashtags SOS Cuba, SOS Matanzas, just to name a few. Many of us have been on virtual events where it's clear that these bots, these robots, are just spitting out negativity and trying to interrupt the sessions and the meetings that we're having. These are just some of the current ways in which Cuba's detractors are attempting to undermine all that what Cuba represents in its revolution. We know that for more than 60 years under the blockade, most U.S. companies have been forbidden from dealing with Cuba, and the various U.S. laws that punish foreign companies that do business with Cuba. These restrictions are meant to economically squeeze the island and create enough, dissent and discontent within Cuba to force the government to fall. And more frustratingly, as we know, despite claiming that his administration would have a different relationship with Cuba, Joseph Biden has not only maintained the harsh policies of his predecessor, Donald Trump, like limiting travel remittances and downsizing the embassy, but he's further tightened the blockade, as was mentioned earlier. The shameful truth is that the U.S. policy toward Cuba is not an international issue, as many of us know. It's a domestic issue where politicians circulate the same lies so that they can win Cuban American votes in the state of Florida, particularly, pandering to people like Miami Mayor Francis Suarez, who recently called for exploring airstrikes and military intervention against Cuba. But the facts are on Cuba's side. Both the Cuban government and the United Nations have estimated that the blockade has cost the Cuban economy 130 billion with a B dollars over the past 6 decades. And it's worth noting that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce estimates that the blockade costs the U.S. economy billions of dollars each year as well. The human toll is harder to quantify, but it's clearly been significant. Human rights experts at the United Nations have called on the U.S. to ease its sanctions against COVID-19 pandemic, and arguing that such a change would save lives, and by allowing Cuban greater access to medical supplies and equipment. Gerardo Hernandez, one of the Cuban Five Heroes, also currently the coordinator of the Committees in Defense of the Revolution, has certified that the vast majority of Cubans have been severely hindered by the blockade. It's clear that Cuba policy hardliners have implicitly accepted the human and economic costs of the blockade as acceptable in order to achieve the goals of undermining the Cuban Revolution. But the reality is that Cuba has been subjected to a series of attacks that have created tremendous hardships for the Cuban people. In addition to the 60-plus-year-old blockade, the economic challenges that are currently Cubans are currently dealing with, the food and medicine challenges, the causes of which can be directly tied to the US's relentless punishment of Cuba through its blockade policies, coupled with the pandemic, have created the perfect storm for hardship and have struck an incredible blow to Cuba and its people. Still, despite all of these challenges, all of these attacks against her, it cannot be overstated how incredible it is that Cuba and its people have remained resilient and made tremendous accomplishments. Cuba has done many things, but just in the health sector alone, and I know Dr. Adri will speak more eloquently on these issues, but Cuba has manufactured its own vaccines to fight COVID, as the deputy chief was explaining, 5 different candidates, including Soberana 2, including the efforts to vaccinate children. In fact, Cuba is the first country to vaccinate children as young as 2 years old. Cuba is working hard to reopen its classrooms. Due to COVID, most in-person classes were suspended and replaced by televised classes, but Cuba's on track toward reaching its goal of vaccinating 90% of its adult population by the end of November. So those are just a few things that I wanted to highlight in terms of what our community, our Cuba Solidarity community has been engaged in. in addition to, I think, working virtually to hold informational activities and informational events like this, and like the list of others that I mentioned earlier. There is, as was recently announced, plans for the US-Cuba Normalization Conference to take place next spring. Of course, our hope is that this can be an in-person event, an opportunity for people to actually gather to really talk about the challenges that Cuba is facing and the work that we as the international solidarity community can do to continue to lift up and support Cuba during this difficult time, and to push back against these attacks that Cuba has been forced to endure. There has been the effort to obviously raise funds for medicines. Very successful campaign to raise money to send 6 million syringes to Cuba, of which many of us were all involved in. It was done under the Global Health Partners, but with the support, I would say, of the Cuba solidarity community across the country. And of course, there have been individual efforts as well. IFCO Pastors has done its part. Baltimore Friends of Latin America, we've partnered with happily to take down medicines on the last 2 trips that we've been able to do in the last 6 months alone. And of course, others in various other states across the country have really stood up and pushed back against the not only the distortion about Cuban reality, but trying to really work to educate people about the reality and to collect medical aid to actually get down to the island. And of course, we're excited that this fall, we have confirmed with our recent trip that we will be organizing our 31st Friend Shipment Caravan this November. We had put it on hold because of COVID, but we received the authorization to go ahead and move forward with bringing our caravan to Cuba in November. We'll be traveling, the dates for the caravan are November 13th through the 26th. We'll be going, encouraging people to join together for the orientation on the 13th. We'll be in Cuba beginning the 15th of November. We think that we know that there are many people who are enthusiastic about traveling to Cuba, seeing the reality there. And we want to encourage each and every one of you that are joining us today to come to Cuba, come see it for yourself, whether it's the first time you've been there or it's the 50th time that you've been there. Come learn the reality of what's happening on the ground, learn about the work that Cuba has done, the incredible work to fight COVID. We want to encourage you. I can invite you to encourage you to a special conversation that we hope to have with Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel, who is really excited about receiving us when we get to the island. We want to meet and learn about what the faith community is doing, what the women connected with the Federation of Cuban Women, what the various activities that are taking place for the LGBTQ community. So there are a variety of different things that we already have in place, and we're excited that we'll be able to take this 31st Friend Shipment Caravan down this November, and again, encourage you all to be with us. This is an opportunity for us not only to announce the caravan, but to ask you to join us, to participate. If you can't do it in person, to provide an opportunity for another young person to actually go and see and witness Cuba for themselves. As the Deputy Chief already mentioned, the moment we are in now is very similar to the challenges that we faced during that first Friend Shipment Caravan that my father organized in 1992 at the height of the special period. And as Cuba could count on us then, they can count on us now We're honored to be one of the first groups that will be traveling to Cuba since the start of the pandemic. And once the country is prepared to reopen up to receive visitors. The importance of having visitors on the ground is really critically important for our Cuban friends. So we encourage you to join us, to come, and let's together show that Cuba is not alone. Okay, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you again to our friends in Baltimore for organizing this wonderful conversation. And I look forward to answering any questions along the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gail. Wonderful, wonderful presentation. And I can tell you from my personal experience, I traveled to Cuba twice with Pastors for Peace. You will not regret it. You will meet a lot of internationals. You will have a chance to go through the streets of Cuba and talk to the Cuban people so that you can see for yourselves what is actually going on over there. And that is the reason why so many of us have been there, and we have been the recipients of the wonderful music, the happiness, the warmth, and the generosity of the Cuban people. I always will continue to say Cuba is hope, because being a little island like it is,
Yes.
with very limited resources, because it is an island, it has shown the rest of the world how much it can do for everyone in Cuba. Thank you so very much. Now, you are going to have an opportunity to contribute towards this effort. Ken Morgan, an active member of the Baltimore Cuba Resolution Committee, will make a pitch. Ken?
Thank you so much, Leslie. Commodities for Cuba. Commodities for Cuba. We have certain collections of various, I would say, commodities or souvenirs that are that we hold, that many of us hold dear, that we are giving away today. And we are giving this away for a donation to the Pastors for Peace IFCO 31st Friendshipment Caravan and ELAM, which is the medical school that Dr. Audrey will talk about soon. And so here we go. We have so many little documents and posters, etc., that we would like you to have for a contribution to the Pastors for Peace IFCO Friendshipment Program. Gail Walker has told you about the fact that this is the 31st shipment caravan to Cuba. And we would like you to really go on this. But we want you to also be a part of providing the necessary means to actually get there. And this is your grand opportunity to participate in providing an auction of sorts. I might say that the Cuban people have defended their revolution for 61 years, since 1959. Some go back to 1953, but to 1959 in reference to this. And also, the Cuban people feel proud to say that they will continue to defend their revolution. Now, I would like to at least begin by offering a statue that we would like you to to donate. And you will be able to get this person. And there is another person as well. And here we go. And these are Cubans. And so we want to hear from you. I'm not sure how we worked out the process of donations, but let's start with these statues or figurines. Okay, so again, this is so extremely important because it's just not a donation to be donating. It's a donation in solidarity with the Cuban people. How are we working this, Leslie?
So anyone who would like to make a pledge, raise your hand. And remember, you will receive this prize once IFCO has received the donation. So for a $50 donation or more, you can get one of these beautiful figures or any of the other items that we have available for you. Once IFCO receives a donation, they will communicate to us and we will get in touch with you to get the item to you.
Right.
Thank you, Ken.
Yes,
I would like to start by making a pledge of $100 so that I can get those two beautiful figures that I do not have.
Okay, so we want you to send, I believe, we want you to send this to IFCO Post Office Box 1368, Orange, New Jersey. It's on your screen, 07051-1368. Please hurry with this because as Gail has mentioned, November 13th is they will be traveling. So we need to get this to you soon. We need to get the donation soon. And we need to get your, so that you will be able to receive your gift. So again, IFCO P.O. Box 1368, Orange, New Jersey, 07051 1368 1368. And also there's a text, the word to IFCO, which is telephone number is 646-859-5344. These are different ways in which you can donate to an organization that has for 31, that in its 31st year is going to take needed supplies to Cuba. So please give.
So I say that I will make a $100 pledge, but I'm willing to defer that to a person who can make a pledge of more than $100. I'll be happy to let them go to someone else who can donate more than $100. I will still send the $100 donation to Pastors for Peace. Do I have a taker? Thank you, Sammy.
Are there ways in which people can be unmuted, or is there a way to through the chat? Is there a way to be able to for persons to write down their names and their interest in the particular items for donation?
Yes, people can use the chat. They're able to unmute or raise their hand, however you'd like to do it.
Okay, so we're going to give you a little bit of time to do that and ponder that. The idea is that the self-determination for the people of Cuba is a necessity. And one of the largest barriers to break, and we will break it, is the U.S. blockade against Cuba. So what I say is, and I've been being a part of many car caravans recently, Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Cuba sí, bloqueo no. We want you to give. And these are the pictures of the items in which I believe you can identify that are the ones that you want. I believe that there are about 12 or 13 items, and that would reinforce the idea of providing you with further incentive to solidarize with the Cuban government and the people of Cuba who represent the people of Cuba.
I will make a pledge.
Go ahead. Who is this?
This is Richard Oakes.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you so much.
I pledge $100.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I do not need any of the Cuba mementos because I have several already.
Why do you have it? But that's good. Great. Thank you so much. And I'm going to contribute $100. So we've got $300 at least visibly in the pot. Do we get more?
You will have a chance to. We're going to have another pitch. Think about it. Any pledge will be helpful. $5, $10, anything adds up. So just think about it. You're going to have another chance. Thank you, Ken, for doing this. I know this is a difficult job, always asking for money as we do, but the way I see it is giving you an opportunity to be a part of this, of the solution to this problem created by the US government, the government that we unfortunately support through our tax dollars. And next, I have the pleasure of introducing Lucy Murphy. Lucy was born into an African family in Washington, D.C. Lucy encourages people to sing together for justice and peace and the well-being of vulnerable individuals. To reach a diverse audience, she sings in 12 languages. Lucy is based in Washington, D.C. Lucy?
Hey, thank you, Leslie. I went with Pastors for Peace to Cuba, and it's a very special experience. I think Pastors for Peace takes more family groups, parents and children, aunties, uncles, and nieces and nephews. And it's probably the most economical way to get to Cuba. You know, once upon a time, we focused on getting public housing, tenants, welfare recipients, you know, people who were on the edge, who would really see and appreciate what's going on in Cuba. Lately, we've gotten into academics and very middle-class folks. And so I'm hoping that people will make contributions to IFCO Pastors for Peace so we can get some more people who are on the edge to get down to Cuba, because they're the ones who are going to really make a change in this society. I'm going to take a song that Andre Crouch created, and Bruce Thomas of SEIU changed a few words. And I'm going to ask people to sing along with me. I won't be able to, you'll be able to hear me. I won't be able to hear you, but I can feel you, you know? music is something that we need to do together. It's not a commodity. It's not just something that you listen to. It's something we need to participate in together. So soon and very soon, we are gonna change the world. Well, now soon and very soon, we are gonna change the world. Well, now soon and very soon, we are gonna change the world. It's gonna last forever and ever. We're gonna change the world. End the blockade. End the blockade. We are gonna change the world. Let me hear you. We are
We're
gonna
gonna
change the
change the
world.
world.
Well, now end
And
the
the
blockade.
blockade.
We are
We're
gonna
gonna
change the world.
change.
It's gonna last forever and ever. We're
And
gonna change the world. No more racism. No more
race.
racism. We are gonna change the world.
Change the world.
Well, now, no more racism. We are
Racism.
gonna change the
We are
world.
gonna
Well, now,
change the world.
no more racism.
No
We
more
are gonna
racism.
change the world. It's
We
gonna
are
last
gonna change the
forever
world.
and ever. We're gonna change the world. En el español, pronto, muy pronto, cambiaremos este mundo. Pronto,
Pronto,
muy
muy
pronto,
pronto.
cambiaremos este mundo. Pronto, muy
Pronto,
pronto,
muy pronto.
cambiaremos este mundo. Durará la vida, la vida.
Vida.
Cambiaremos
Oh,
este mundo. Soon and very soon, soon and very soon. We are gonna
we are
change
gonna
the world.
change the
Well,
world.
now, soon and very soon, we are
Mm,
gonna change the
we are
world.
gonna
Well, now,
change the
soon
world.
and very soon, we are
Soon
gonna
and very,
change the world. It's gonna last
we are gonna
forever
change the
and
world.
ever. We're gonna change the world. Thank you,
Bravo.
Pastors for Peace, Leslie Salgado, and all the rest of my friends.
Thank you, dear Lucy.
you.
We love you. We love you. Gracias, querida. Muchas gracias. Tú siempre realzas nuestros eventos. You always bring our events up higher. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Samira Adri. She's a graduate of Escuela Latinoamericana de Medicina, or ILAM, in Cuba. She's also the coordinator of the ILAM program of IFCO Pastors for Peace. I have had the pleasure of meeting her because she resides here in Maryland now. And it has been such a wonderful experience to meet a young woman who has so much to share with us and so much to tell us about what Cuba is about. So, Samira, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you to the friends that we have in Baltimore in the DC area. It's an honor to be a part of this event today. For me, especially having called Maryland home for the last 21 years of my life, it's really touching for me to find a Cuba solidarity movement that is based here and that has been strongly supportive of the efforts to end the blockade for so long. Wish I had known earlier before I went to Cuba, but I know now, and so we will always be connected. And having met Leslie has been inspirational for me personally to see a woman of color so dedicated to the cause for liberation, not only for Cuban people, but all over the world, continues to be that light that keeps some of us going. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity today. you've heard from, some of our comrades earlier speaking. Our leader at IFCO Pastors for Peace, Gail Walker, has explained fully the impact of the blockade, COVID-19, the economic turmoil, creating a perfect storm for what the US would love to see as an opportune moment for intervention. And we have seen and heard from our comrade, Council Alejandro Garcia, the struggle that Cuba has fought through over these 62 years. And so we have to pay close attention to that history and the voices who have called for an internationalist approach in resolving human problems. We see that the threat of our aspiration to unify oppressed people of the world is the greatest threat to the US and or Western imperialism and hegemony. Cuba is the internationalist beacon of the world, and we have a lot to learn from her. The blockade, which is the longest economic war on any country in the world at over 62 years, has severely impacted every aspect of life in Cuba. The pandemic has taken advantage of the vulnerabilities created by the blockade and has created a situation where difficulties are due to compounding factors. What can we do to help is the theme of this event today. We must first understand the history of our nations to be more interconnected than we realize, and we can benefit from learning from each other. But I say that knowing and echoing a sentiment that I was recently reminded of by Cuban friends, the fact that Cubans know more about US society than US society knows about Cuba. And even further than that is the warning that Jose Marti, apostle of the Cuban nation, and the one who wrote a poem, Versos Sencillos, that is the inspiration for the song you heard earlier in the program by La Lucha Struggle Band, Guantanamera, simple verses or Versos Sencillos, has words that are taken from there to create the song Guantanamera. So you should understand the importance of Jose Marti to the Cuban people and to the history of this continent, I should say. So he gives in his eminent work, Nuestra America, Our America, where he states that the US is not inherently evil, but it is ignorant of its neighbors to the south. And that is what causes it to insist on domination without any expectation of opposition. America does not belong to the United States. It belongs to all the peoples of these continents, North and South, and the islands in between. We must not allow false notions to divide us, not these borders that have been created by a few, and certainly not the languages that colonial powers use to separate their property, in quotation marks. I have seen how the Cuban people have weathered the storms placed in front of them. The natural disasters that wreak extensive havoc here in the United States on that island are mitigated by a well-prepared national plan that involves grassroots community at its core. Infectious diseases that have been endemic to that island and that region have been curbed by well-prepared plans to preserve lives. And despite poverty, the few amazing resources of the island have been laser focused on not only resolving the country's problems, but serving the needs of other countries as well. Whether it's healthcare workers in the field of athletics, education, agriculture, and so much more. The ingenuity of Cubans in the face of adversity is a lesson we should all amplify for the greater good of mankind. While our government insists on siphoning the intellectual and human resources of third world countries, Cuba has been injecting those resources back into struggling nations. The founding of my alma mater, Elam, is a serious weapon to decolonize the way health is guaranteed to people all over the world. Elam produces doctors of science and conscience and is responsible for not only addressing the healthcare needs of humanity, but also to spread a humanist form of medicine that seeks to preserve life first, rather than profits or property. The Cuban people have supported such a project for over 20 years, having been sensitized to the needs of the world beforehand. When Haiti was struck with an earthquake, Cuba was there and never left. When Katrina happened here, Cuba was ready, but our own government refused its help and we continue to see the negligence of leaders entrusted with the protection of our people. Today, the trending topic is vaccines. While for over 3 decades, Cuba has been fortifying its biotechnological sector to be able to produce 8 of the 11 vaccines used in the national vaccination program. Cuba is surging forward in production of vaccines against COVID-19 to save its population, as well as other countries who have been grossly overlooked in the race to own the vaccine and to make profits from it. Today, Cuba is the first country in the world, as you've heard, to vaccinate children from ages 2 to 18 to secure a safe educational environment before resuming in-person classes. Children and parents willingly consent to these vaccines because there is a culture of scientific acceptance and guidance in Cuba. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is plagued with questions about our children's health and safety, with already having returned to in-person instruction. Another trending topic is the booster shot for COVID-19 vaccines. Today, Cuba already vaccinates its population with a booster vaccine called Soberana Plus to further protect people who have had COVID-19 and who could contract it again. This is because from the very beginning, their scientists knew that with the unpredictability of viruses, all the various tools necessary to ensure a person's health have to be employed. Not only that, the sequelae that people have to live with after having COVID-19 have a direct impact on their health and well-being, which translates to the health of families, communities, and the society at large. Cuban scientists have been working on an intranasal spray vaccine called Mambisa, which will be an alternative to injections but also protect the upper airways in a way that none of the vaccines that exist today in the world would be able to do, because they are only geared to protect the lower respiratory system and severe forms of COVID-19. We have major lessons to learn, and that's just one aspect of Cuba's achievements. These achievements come at a brutal cost to the Cuban people. The World Health Organization has coined the term pandemic fatigue. And as we were just on the island, Gail, Angie, and I saw the effects of this fatigue there. Healthcare workers who have been working tirelessly to secure the health of the population continue under the most stressful conditions anyone can imagine. But while the US and its friends, its allies would call the Cuban work of medical workers in the world as enslavement, Doctora Marisnelli Echemendia Concepcion eloquently stated, "We Cuban medical graduates take on an international commitment that remains and goes with us wherever we are needed. After all, a doctor is only a slave to his or her calling as a humanist." And it's the international solidarity movement that has supported the work of these healthcare workers and the population at large. So what will be our response? What will be the US-Cuba solidarity response? We have to continue the works of longstanding activists in the solidarity movement, the people some of who have been shouted out on this webinar today, but some of whom have been working, like Andre Gomez's group in Miami, or Las Casas de las Americas. So many people have laid the foundation for the work that we continue today. And we must not forget that it is on their backs that Cuba and its people understand that the US people are not the US government. We have to act seriously against the war of misinformation and lies mounted against Cuba. We have to call on our political leaders to stop the stranglehold that is the US blockade against Cuba. And we can tell them to stop destroying the prospects of nations that choose to follow their own path and respect self-determination. We should travel to Cuba as an act of moral obedience. As Reverend Lucius Walker already stated and always embodied, we act not in defiance of our government, but in obedience to our conscience. We should understand that acting on behalf of people we do not know means standing in solidarity with them without having to dictate the ways they choose to handle their business. We have an obligation to help one another, and carrying medical aid or other forms of humanitarian aid in our suitcases or cargo to the island is the least we can do to negate the hate that a few people have been fanning over decades. I have the honor of bringing together two poles in my training: the political and social justice driven work that are represented by Cuban Comrade Counselor Alejandro Garcia and IFCO Passes for Peace Executive Director Gail Walker, and the other pole of my training being medicine And the underlying theme in all these fears is the call of justice and love to influence the way we approach human relations. As a graduate of the Latin American School of Medicine, I know we have been trained to look at all the factors that impact and maintain the health of a people, from the individual, the family, and the community levels. We have been taught from early on that social determinants are what influence the health of a people. Social determinants of health are things like safe housing, transportation, neighborhoods, racism, discrimination, violence, education, job opportunities, access to nutritious foods, polluted air and water, language and literacy skills. So while in Cuba, education, housing, health, and safety are human rights guaranteed by the government, the impacts of the blockade on delivering those rights are immeasurable. But Cuba continues to fight for its people. Things like medicine are heavily subsidized by the government so that people can buy them at very low prices. I kept a box of medication used for ulcerative colitis and rheumatoid arthritis called sulfapyridine, right? And this box, you will see that it's produced in Cuba by Biopharma Cuba and is marketed to the public at 4 Cuban pesos. That is less than 20 cents in US dollars. These are the sort of medicines that Cuba produces for its people and also carries with their internationalist medical brigades to various countries to deliver healthcare where it's needed. The blockade makes it hard for Biopharma Cuba to access the raw materials needed to produce a medicine like this and more essential medicines like antibiotics, antivirals, analgesics, or commonly known as pain relievers, and much more. I make this example to show you that how the social determinant of economics is, in this case, the US blockade's impact on Cuba's economy and access to materials directly impacts the health of its people. I have the privilege of being the coordinator of the Elam Scholarship Program at IFCO Passage for Peace, which is entrusted with the responsibility of recruiting, vetting, and supporting candidates for the full scholarship to study medicine in Cuba. It is an amazing opportunity that is open to young people from disadvantaged and underrepresented communities between the ages of 18 and 25 who are U.S. citizens and who are U.S. citizens and who have completed their college level prerequisites of biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, and physics, with a commitment to return to the U.S. and serve in communities where they are most needed. We should reach out to the youth of our marginalized communities, encourage them to pursue medicine, Cuban style, because it is not entrenched in the culture of profit and rather promotes universal health care as a human right. You can request an application for the Elam Scholarship by visiting our website, www.ifconews.org, and clicking on the medical school tab. I'll place everything in the chat throughout the program so you can have access to that. And it is also our greatest wish to remount the counterattack on the US blockade on Cuba with a larger group to go down in November of this year. Back in 1993, during the second Friendshipment Caravan, the largest caravan group of about 300 participants surged forward with tons of humanitarian aid. The tactics of Passage for Peace have evolved over time, but the essence remains the same. And we should understand that it's not material things that show our love and solidarity, but our physical presence against all odds. We have learned, if we have learned anything through the pandemic, it is how the human family thrives on physical connections, not material wealth. Please join the 31st Friendshipment Caravan by requesting an application from our caravan coordinator, John Waller. His email will be in the chat as well. And you all should remember, we should all remember, Leslie is totally right in saying that Cuba is hope. And as Gail mentioned before, we should rally around let Cuba live and Cuba no está sola. So with that being said, we must continue this fight hasta la victoria siempre. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. You're so inspiring. It's so hopeful for those of us who are about 70 and so years old to see that young people are rising up and that there is a hope that things will change because we have to stay on it. And we understand that cruelty and domination and this system, so-called capitalist, does not respond to the needs of the majority of the people around the world, and that we need to change it. And it's on us to work so that that will happen. Thank you, Samira. Thank you for your beautiful words. The next, we have again another opportunity for you to give us some money or get some souvenirs from us if you would like them. Ken?
Yes.
Want to have it?
Thank you. And thank you for the wonderful words of the three guest speakers who absolutely underlined the solidarity that we need to enhance the Cuban government and the people of Cuba. So with that, what I would like to do is to continue, if we can show the figures and items again, so that we can stimulate more giving, that would be important. Can we do that? Someone? Okay, okay. So we have Che. Do we have anything else? Anything else? Anything?
Yes, Teresa would like to donate $100.
Okay, Teresa, $100. Very good, Teresa. Anyone else? Please give. It doesn't have to be $100. It doesn't have to be $50. It has to be whatever contributions that you are able to give. Please give and express in one way your solidarity with the Cuban people. Okay, so here again is how
I went on the website.
Here's again how we can do that, which is the website, and I believe that also the text for IFCO. IFCO PO Box 1368, Orange, New Jersey 07051 1368, and the text word IFCO to 646-859-5344. And even if you do not get a gift, this is for to solidarize with the people of Cuba, with the government of Cuba, with the 12 or 13 million Cubans, as well as people around the world. As we know, for example, also in Africa, in Haiti, in Latin America, these are all areas where, as Samira, I believe, talked about, that have medical missions from Cuba. And so it's not a game. It is a reality. The reality of the people of the world. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter whether you are Republican or Democrat or independent or communist or Marxist, etc. If you believe in the self-determination of the Cuban people, then give, please.
Well, I'm Cindy Farquhar, and I had no idea it didn't have anything to do with my color. So since you tell me that, I feel encouraged to say something, which is that I'm reached the time of my life when I don't want more things, but I would like to put in for a poster, if it's possible, for one of my younger comrades so that they could have it, because I think they would enjoy that art on their wall. So I would like to donate $100.
And Cindy, who are you?
I'm Cindy Farquhar, and I work on the Cuba Resolution Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. That is wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
So just keep in mind that you can still have the opportunity to do it. The caravan will leave in November. If you feel that you can afford it, whatever amount is wonderful. And if you would like, if you think about it, the holidays will be coming at the end of this year and you want to give a meaningful present you want to give someone a beautiful picture of Che, or you want to give someone who may be interested in going to Cuba a guide, a tourist guide to Cuba, I have one here that you're welcome to have. We also have some beautiful homemade little notebooks, homemade in Cuba. And we have those beautiful figurines that I said I will let go to anybody who makes a donation over $100. So thank you, Ken. Thank you so much. We now have time for some questions and answers. Ken was gathering those questions and answers. I'm sorry, no, Andrew.
Yeah.
Andrew, can
Leslie,
you come on?
Really quickly, Mary Eliasar has her hand raised.
All right, Mary.
Thank you for the wonderful program. I pledged $50, and I am on the Baltimore Cuba Resolution Committee as well, and in Baltimore Peace Action.
Thank you, Mary. That's wonderful.
Hello.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me? I'd like to pledge $50.
And who is
but
this?
I'm not sure. This is Jeannie Dresser.
Yes, Jeannie. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay. I couldn't get through. Okay, good. I got through. Okay.
We heard you. Do me a favor. Can you put that on the chat so that we know who you are and how to contact you? And also, if you would like to.
I don't know how to do that. My phone doesn't work right with the system.
Yeah,
okay, can I give
she's
you?
Calling in. She's calling in. I've got her name and phone number.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Anybody else?
Yes, Leslie, this is Andre Powell here. I'd like to donate $100.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you, Andre.
We're trying to get to 1,000. We're trying to get to $1,000. Let's go.
All right.
Anybody else? I think we have.
I'll pledge an extra 100 for the Elam school program. So I owe $200.
We have $900. 900. And it's not going once or twice or three times. But it's going. It's coming. It expresses your solidarity with Cuba and the defense of the Cuban Revolution since 1959. So please give.
I will share a story that some of you know, a personal story about Cuba. In 1996, I traveled during the special period with IFCO Pastors for Peace. And my oldest brother, who was having serious problems in Ecuador, I'm originally from Ecuador, had gone to see some doctors in Ecuador. And they told him his options. They said, you can go to Argentina for an operation, you can go to the US for an operation, but you need to think about how much money that would cost. It's going to be at least $30,000 to $100,000, which he couldn't afford. And this brother of mine, the oldest brother, very anti-communist, decided that he was coming to Cuba and, at the same time that I was going there so that we could help him. My other brother, a little bit older than I am, has been a Cuba activist for his whole life. He and I were coming to the World Meeting in Solidarity with Cuba. So my oldest brother came with my brother, Manuel, and we met in Havana. The second or third day that my oldest brother went to the clinic, to the hospital to be checked, he passed out in front of the hospital. He was taken into the hospital. He was helped. And when he came out, he saw a doctor, and the doctor told him, Hugo, you are in very bad shape. You are going to have to stay here, and we are going to have to operate on you. And my brother told the doctor, the Cuban doctor, I'm sorry, doctor, but I was not prepared. I did not bring the money. The cost to a non-Cuban citizen was going to be $10,000. And you know what the doctor said to my brother? She said, Hugo, in Cuba, people's lives at first, money is second. We will operate on you, and we know that you will pay us when you are able to. My brother was operated very successfully in 1996, and he lived until last year when he died of other causes. So personally, I owe that to Cuba and my admiration and love for what Cuba does. Cuban doctors are not slaves. They are workers. They are health workers. They are people who are helping not only the Cuban people, but people all over the world. They never ask my brother, are you a communist? Are you a socialist? Do you believe in the Cuban system at all? And that is my story. And I have so many others, and I have such gratitude for Cuba. And this is what we need to bring here to the US, because there are so many lies about that beautiful country and what they are trying to build, a more just and peaceful society. And that is why they are penalized. Thank you. So now let's go to some questions and answers. Andrew, do you have some?
I'm going to first invite our speakers to be spotlighted alongside everybody. All right. First question comes from Ken Hurd. Should we make plans to visit Cuba soon? And will there be a set of contacts to walk us through the process? Who would like to take that on?
I can just say, Ken, we'd love for you to consider going on the upcoming caravan. So absolutely, you can feel free to reach out to our caravan coordinator, John Waller. He was on the call. I don't know if he's still here, but we can make sure to put in the chat again how to reach him directly. And he can certainly walk you through that process. So that's one way. And then, but my overall answer is yes. I think that Cuba is looking forward to receiving her friends and family members who haven't been able to come for the last, period due to the pandemic. Obviously it's got to be done carefully, and we're we're requesting that each of the caravan participants has to be vaccinated to come. We will do all we can to maintain, the safety protocols because we want to be safe. We want our caravannistas to be safe, but equally, maybe even more importantly, we want our Cuban family to remain safe once they open the doors to travelers. But I think having people on the island is going to be very important for Cuba's continued recovery.
I have a special announcement. I just received a message from a friend who wants to remain anonymous. He will make a $500 donation.
Wow, that's incredible.
Thank you.
That is so wonderful. And all of this, I just want to take a moment to say is really, it helps to support the important work. But along the lines of what Lucy said, we have been trying to figure out how to get scholarships for young people, particularly first timers, to actually go and see Cuba. So we will also make a commitment to utilize some of this money for that as well. But that's wonderful. Thank you, Leslie, and thank you to our anonymous donor.
Right. So on there is also I believe a May Day brigade.
Yes.
That also probably will be going if the restrictions are lifted. And there's also the Venceremos brigade.
Yes.
So those are different ways in which you can actually see for yourself, and not just hear our words, but to talk and to interact with the Cuban people, all of the Cuban people.
I'd just like to emphasize that the Pastors for Peace Friendship and Caravan is going to be the first on the island this year. And that is super important because, as you all know, tourism is a huge factor in stabilizing Cuba's economy. And the lack of tourism for this 20-month period has really suffocated Cuba. And so the sooner we can get there, the better, to not only bombard Cuba with whatever resources we may be carrying ourselves to spend. But again, I want to stress the point that human connection is really the source of sustaining our love for one another despite the hardships. And so going with the Friendshipment Caravan is an act that, you know, it's like in the biblical story of Jesus, you know, multiplying the fish and the bread. It was a little to a few eyes, but it replicated into much more. And for those of us who are not religious, that is okay. You can still understand the example. I'm of the Muslim faith, but that example still stands, you know, because of our respect for Jesus. So just understand that what we can do with our presence and with our act of defiance of these unjust policies is urgent, and we need to go as soon as possible. So whichever you choose, at least look to Pastors for Peace first.
Thank you. Andrew, can you read us the next question, please?
Yep, Cindy has a good question. You know, given people's faith in the Cuban scientists, is there any anti-vaccination movement in Cuba?
You want me to take this, Counselor Alejandro?
Mr. Garcia is going to do
Mr.
it, I think, but he needs to unmute himself.
Oh, sorry. No. When you assess the Cuban reality, you see that there is a high level of culture in Cuba. There is a high level of culture even in the health, for the health issues. People are well prepared on all these efforts about the state goal to vaccinate people, to vaccinate the kids just after the delivery by the mothers. You are taking 3, 4, 5 different shots for different vaccines in your next 6 months, in your next 11 months. So there is a culture about getting vaccinations in Cuba. Could be few people that will not take the vaccination of COVID or any other vaccines, but it's connecting more to some belief on some religious basis, but not a general or a public a feeling on denying the vaccination. And that's very important because it helps a lot the state to control any disease, including the COVID-19 now. There is no any of that campaign that you see in other countries, including here in the US. And that's something that helps a lot to the Cuban government to control the pandemic, to prevent the increase of cases. And now we are starting to see some declining on the deaths of the amount of death in the population. And we hope that in the next 4 and 6 weeks, we could be seeing more decreasing on the number of cases about COVID-19.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
I think also you can actually access online Grandma. Grandma is a newsletter that comes in about 3 or 4 languages that gives, in my opinion, an up-to-date response, not just response, but up-to-date news about COVID, about what's happening in the world. So Grandma, Resumen, RUSEMEN, and something called Cuba News. There are probably other, IFCO Passes for Peace. There's a newsletter as well that keeps you up to date on things. So, subscribe. Be a part of the solidarity movement. I think it is on September 26th, which is a Sunday at 3 o'clock in Washington, D.C., there is a car caravan that has that will go for those of you who know Washington, D.C., down 14th Street, all the way down 14th Street to U Street, and to the African American Civil War Museum. And that will be on the 26th of September, which is a Sunday, to be able to do that. So,
in Decatur.
I'm sorry?
It starts at 14th and Decatur.
Okay. But basically, I believe that we can also send out flyers of all the different kinds of activities to anyone who wants to also sign up.
I think that, sorry for my intervention now, but I think that it's very important what Kenneth has mentioned, because the disinformation campaign about Cuba is not limited to the shortage of medicine or foods. It's not limited to amplify the protests on 11 July. Even in the issue of the vaccinations and vaccines, in the 2 weeks ago, we heard a misinformation effort by a very big media company here in the US about the non-validation of the Cuban vaccines by the World Health Organization. And that happened in the midst of a very big spread of good news about the Cuban vaccines. Mm-hmm. And in the midst of that moment, a big company here in the US put the information that the World Health Organization would not recognize the Cuban vaccines. And so the misinformation and the campaign against the Cuba is not limited to our economic problems, to the about the human rights issues in Cuba. They try to put a bad picture on everything, including and mainly on issues like we have been successful. And the example about the critics and the actions against the Cuban vaccines by a big media company here in the US shows that any effort that you could make to overcome that would be very important.
Thank you. Very well said. It's, sanctions kill. It's criminal. And the way they build this campaign is by saying lies, plain lies. And this is the reason why we have these educational events, because we know that that is not true and that we need to present the true facts about what is happening in Cuba. And again, if you go to Cuba, you will see for yourself. Nobody can tell you where you can go, what you can ask, who can you talk to. Unlike what, the image that is presented here, in my experience, and speaking Spanish, I could go anywhere. Cubans are very talkative, very friendly. Nobody is going to stop them from doing that. I can tell you that. I was invited into many people's homes, people that I just met on the street, because they want to share their story. So that is the opportunity you have by traveling to Cuba. And yes, please take that opportunity. Andrew, let's go to the next question, please.
Yeah. Another question from Ken Hurd. Are there intervention plans we can collectively assist in stopping? I don't know who would have who can answer that. Anyone could have an inside line with the CIA?
Well, one thing I would say is, I think it's important, we have the opportunity to talk to our elected officials. And when we hear these outrageous, ideas like the mayor of Miami espousing, I think it's really important for us to be able to talk to our elected officials and let them know that's crazy talk. And I would hope that, we could count on them to not support any kind of initiative like that, but to go on the record of calling out the crazies. There's one thing I think that, we can do.
I think that just talking about the intervention, we have to remember when the Iraq military intervention, the amount of time between the intervention and the spreading of lies about Iraq in the US was not too long. So what they try always to do is to paint a picture of bad scenes in any country, but the moment in which they decide to intervene is not so far from the moment when they start to create or to prepare the lights to do that. So when we see those people in the extreme right groups in Miami and another part of the country calling for the intervention, is because they really believe that if they can present a supposed reality in Cuba of a big crisis, a big an apocalyptic situation, then they know that the potential of a decision by the political elites in the US to do something wrong is not a crazy thing. So for that reason, they at that time they were talking about intervention, either military intervention or humanitarian intervention, which are the same at the end of the day. So for that reason, it's very dangerous when some people start to talk about intervention and using a reality that they, like Gail mentioned in the beginning, the direct consequence of all the situation that we have now in our economy, the realities that we saw on July 11th is a direct consequence of the actions taken by the US. We can go back again to some words by the Deputy Assistant Secretary and in 1960, that US official mentioned that talking about the sanctions and talking about creating problems in the Cuban economy. And he said that if such a policy is adopted about sanctions, it should be the result of a positive decision which would call forth a line of action which, while as adroit and inconspicuous as possible, makes the greatest inroads in denying money and supplies to Cuba, to decrease monetary and real waste, to bring about hunger, desperation, and overthrow the government. So the foundation, the pillars of the goal of the US to destroy the revolution was set early in the beginning of the revolutions. And it's the same in 1960, and it's the same today. So for that reason, it's important to show that the reality of Cuba is different, even if we have to recognize that we have to do a lot still to overcome our challenges, to do more for our people. But even recognizing that, it's clear that the real intention of the US is to destroy the revolution. And for that reason, people like in the extreme right groups don't want to reinstate the travel right to America and to go to Cuba, because they know that if the millions of Americans go to Cuba, they will see the reality. And the reality is much, much different than what they picture in the US media. So, and you can see, and those folks have never gone to Cuba. Marco Rubio has never gone to Cuba. Ted Cruz, Bob Menendez, they know nothing about the Cuban reality. But their goal is to keep the Americans, citizens, far away from visiting Cuba and from more connection with Cuba.
You are so right on that. Oh my God. Yeah. That's Andrew, right. One more question.
We haven't had any in the chat, but I do want to open it up to people to ask any questions.
We will take one more question, and then we have a final number before we end this meeting. Thank you. Everyone has been so wonderful.
Maybe the guest speakers want to summarize a little bit, perhaps.
One more question. Thank you, Scott. I know Cuba is very gracious and does its best not to be provocative. But when the US puts Cuba on the list of terrorist states, who doesn't Cuba call out? Why doesn't Cuba call out the US for torture at Guantanamo Bay?
It does. It does. And I think it's important. This question is important to highlight the hypocrisy of some of these actions. But, you know, every year since 92, the UN General Assembly has voted on a resolution to end the US blockade. And we've had, under the leadership of Counselor Bruno Rodriguez saying year after year, stating the hypocrisy of these policies and citing one of these prime examples being Guantanamo Bay prison and its torture tactics utilized to this day. So it's a question that is very important, and it's a question that should bring to the forefront of our minds that unfortunately what our government chooses to deal in says a lot to its own terrorist activities. And yet it continues to point the fingers at other countries and other peoples, just playing on the ignorance and the power they have of feeding the masses with false information. And so that is why we continue to say we must educate ourselves in the truth. And I just want to reiterate something that has been said in previous occasions that sometimes we lose sight of. Comandante in Jefe Fidel Castro said that the Cuban Revolution was won, and it didn't start in 1959. It was the one that started back from the Spanish-Cuban-American War. And the message has been the same, that Cuba does not want any foreign intervention or any foreign meddling in its right to determine what its path is. So if we are truly in support of the people, as President Biden has said, then we will lift the blockade. And if we are truly wanting the people to progress, then we will lift the blockade and we will stop perpetuating these lies, because obviously it's been years of listening to a small minority group of people who, as you've heard, almost none of them have actually traveled to Cuba, lived in Cuba for an extensive period of time to even know what the reality is, but yet they dictate what the policy should be that affects over 11 million people. That is astounding. And we should also know it's the same minority in the United States that governs and determines the livelihoods of those of us who are in the majority, whether it's working class or lower middle class population. So there are comparisons that we must draw from, and parallels we must draw from our experiences, and that should educate us and inform us about how we do see Cuba and how we see the rest of the world in this, our America.
Thank you, Samira. And to add to that, I often think, being originally from Ecuador, how could I hate a government more than love my own family, my own people? You have to question that. Is such thing possible? Or is it because these folks who want Cuba to be invaded, or Venezuela to be invaded, or Nicaragua to be invaded? Is it because they have no heart or no connections with those countries? And on the other hand, are profiting from that propaganda. So how can we trust that? A lot of people don't question that, but I do, because I could never hate the government of my native country, my country of birth, more than I love my family. My family, my friends are above that. And it should be the same for Cubans. It should be the same for Salvadorans. It should be the same for Chinese. So let's stop those lies, and let's stop these lies that are trying to break up families. Thank you so much. And again, let's remember what Conga de los Hoyos said: Cuba viva sin que nadie la someta. Alive Cuba without anyone subduing it. Conmigo no te metas. Don't mess with me. A mi tierra se respeta. My homeland will be respected. And that's what we all believe. And thank you so much for the very inspiring presentation, for you being here. We're going to finish now the program with our friends from Struggle La Lucha. We're going to do a final song. Again, thank you so much. Gail, we will be in touch with you with the donations that come, and let us know who has made a donation of over $50. We will offer them one of these beautiful Cuban souvenirs. We'll be happy to do that. Thank you again.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alejandro, for being here. And again, please give our best to the ambassador.
Yeah, thanks to all of you. Thanks to all of you for this opportunity. As I mentioned at the beginning, These your words give us as a Cuban people, as a Cuban diplomat, give the embassy and the Cuban people the enough force and too much force to continue and to keep our convictions about the possibility of having a good and a very strong relation between Cuba and the US and between the people of Cuba and the people of the US. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Andrew and Andre.
That's us.
Okay. Take us out.
Well, I would like to make one last pitch for donations. And what I wanted to say about that is there are lots of nonprofits and charities that ask for your donations. You don't know where they go. I remember, it happens every typhoon in the Philippines. There's some US-based organization taking donations that Filipinos never see. Or certain donation funds go out and they go directly to some politician's pocket, and then no one ever sees it again. This is your chance to donate to something that creates a material force for Cuba, for the people of Cuba, for the international working class. The more people that are able to go to Cuba, see what's really happening, learn the truth about it, it's better for the people's movement all over the world. So one last call. You have all the information you need to make the donations. And I see we got one more. But now I'm going to turn it to Andre to introduce the song.
Thank you, Andrew. Before I go into the next song, just a little insight into why we picked this song to do here at the Struggle La Lucha People's Band. The name of the song is Make Them Hear You. It's actually from a Broadway musical called Ragtime. I think the song is most applicable today for today's program because it really mirrors the work that IFCO, Pastors for Peace, Caravans to Cuba has done for nearly the past 30 years. In the very early years, IFCO Pastors for Peace traveled throughout the country from one town to another. As Reverend Lucius Walker spread the word about the US embargo of Cuba, the decades-long embargo, and the harm and the cruelty it was doing to the people in Cuba. So he began this humanitarian effort to take aid to Cuba from the people of the United States. And it really was from the people because Pastors for Peace went from one city to another, sometimes starting on the East Coast, sometimes starting on the West Coast in the early days. They at times many times encountered hostilities from the US government. I recall one of the early years, there was a little yellow school bus that was donated to Pastors for Peace so that it could carry the humanitarian aid it collected around the country. And it went from city to city to city. When it got to the border, I think it might have been the Texas border, there's such a number of years ago, US government authorities tried to commandeer the little yellow school bus, and because of the contents, claiming, oh, it had some computers in it that could be used to help the Cuban military technology. Well, that would be great. But the truth is, the computers were used for the schools, for the hospitals. Pastors for Peace not only took technical equipment, but they took clothes, they took food. Food gathered all over the country to go to Cuba. After people heard the word of the story from Reverend Lucius Walker's and those at Pastors for Peace, they heard it and they made these donations. as an effort to show their solidarity with Cuba and to break that immoral, illegal blockade of Cuba. So I think this song just fits so very well with the whole history of Pastors for Peace. Here's my intro. Go out and tell your story, let it echo far and wide. Make them hear you, make them hear you. How justice was my battle and how justice was denied. Make them hear you, make them hear you. And say to those who blame us for the way we chose to fight, that sometimes there are battles which are more than black or white. And I could not put down my sword when justice was my right. Make them hear you, make them hear you. Go out and tell our story to your daughters and your sons. Make them hear you, make them hear you. And tell them in our struggle we were not the only ones. Make them hear you, make them hear you. Your sword can be a sermon or the power of the pen. Teach every child to raise their voice, and then my family, then will justice be demanded by 10 million righteous friends. Make them hear you. When they hear you, I'll be near you again.
Bravo. Muchas gracias. Thank you, everyone, again. And let's stay together. Continue with La Lucha, the struggle, like this group's name is. We have a lot to do, but together we can make a difference. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you for the music. Thank you for the wonderful words. And Ken, thank you for helping us with that wonderful pitch. We will see you again. Thank you.
Cuba sí, bloqueo no.
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 Muchas gracias.
Cuba sí, bloqueo no.